Claire. Right, this is the last session, so I'm hoping that everybody's still half awake. As Claire mentioned, I'm Rupa Dachere. I'm the CEO and founder of ThriveWise. And I'm really honored to be here to moderate this most excellent panel. All right, so let's get started. The topic today is Toward a Gender-Just Digital Future, Rethinking How We Build and Govern AI, which is a very broad topic. So I'm going to be asking each of the speakers to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about what they work on, and then we're going to dive into questions. If you have any questions, just raise your hand, and we'll pick you, and you can ask your questions to any of the panelists. All right, so let's start with Sue.
Hi, I'm Sue, and I already introduced about myself, and I'm a professor at Department of AI at UHA, and my research topic is scientific AI, mostly like climate prediction, molecular discovery, and recently started to working on LLM post-training using reinforcement learning.
Hello again. My name is Kalai at Sakan University. As I gave my talk before, I'm working on AI safety things like constructing benchmark and evaluations, or like LLM control and safety alignment and so on. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Kalai Ramea. I'm currently a co-founder and CTO of Planette. Prior to this, I was an AI research scientist. Very similar to Sue, we worked on scientific ML, on how to use AI and novel algorithms for different domains, mostly on climate and energy. At Planette, we do weather forecasting, but most likely focusing on extreme weather events in the long term. So this is from 2 weeks up to 6 months. Say, will you get wildfires? Will you get heat wave more than usual? So those kinds of things, you're focusing on it. And today, as you might have heard, some of you, we are trying to understand how to make those forecasts available to marginalized communities in a better way than it is already there. So happy to discuss more about that.
My name is Roberto Dachere. I used to be a classical computer scientist for a number of years. And then I decided that I wanted to do something more meaningful, and I was looking for something meaningful within computer science. And then I discovered that maybe data, because I was in database, it was something interesting, and I created a data for good manifesto that was, people signed it and nothing happened. And I kind of got frustrated and said, well, they signed it, but that's okay. And then I discovered that data is used by AI. I was not really an AI specialist, but I started 6 years ago something in my little group at the university with 6 people, and then eventually became an initiative that is now spread around the world. And we're trying really to do something useful, so very practical. I became a practitioner, and I understood one basic lesson. I need help, because by myself I can do everything. So that I started to create this thing.
Since you have the mic, let me start with asking you my first question. Is it really possible to achieve a gender-just digital future? Is that really possible? Given the climate right now in all the different countries, it's so difficult to get consensus. Do we even know what gender just means? Can you talk about any of those?
Well, that's the question. Because I would rephrase the question is, can we be people? If you replace the digital with people, I think it's an incredible challenge, because on one hand, there is a hope to improve the world, especially as some young people that are really very talented. And at the same time, there are forces that are making things exactly the opposite. So, and I see some of the presentations are very detailed, some are very general. I think we are part of a phase. One thing that it became clear to me that AI will take over. And it will change dramatically the way we will do things. I don't know how, but this is actually so pervasive that it's not even imaginable. And I have the feeling that there are certain people that are extremely talented and motivated, and they try to become God, but that's not possible. But that's you know, it's a you know, this attitude of and I don't know, it's interesting. To observe it is one thing, to be part of it is another story. You know, very observing is good. And when you're at the doctor, and the doctor told me, I was an eye doctor before coming here, and she said, "Oh, you've been here 4 times. Next time, my AI will be able to tell you something about your eyes." And I was not really happy. I was not happy.
So what, a follow-up for that is, since you have a CC by NCSA product, I work a lot in open source. We have a lot of students here, and they are concerned about their future, especially because a lot of them are women. And can you talk a little bit about how you would envision giving them any advice on how they should think about, using AI or even, being, participating in projects like yours to help them in the future?
Oh, me or her?
You could start and
Me?
then, yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think your participation means that you are interested, committed, and you have time. And there's no incentive. That's the problem. The problem is that there is not a clear incentive that say, oh, I get promoted, I get more money, I get. So that's an issue. Even with all these ethics that we're discussing here, most of the time, if people have no clear regulation that force them to do something, why should they do that? But at the same time, you get somebody young, maybe 21, sending you an email, all enthusiastic about changing the world. And that's exactly the people that you should say, please continue with them. So we should really enforce, a culture where we give opportunity to young people, but also older people should really give opportunity also for young people to go in this direction, which is not the obvious one. I think it's like being a bit outside the box, and there's a challenge, because life is actually life is bringing you in one direction, and then you're very busy. I mean, this is a country where people, I observe, are very busy, which might be good, but sometimes it's good to stop and say, am I going to the right direction? Is that exactly what I want? Is that exactly what my inner feeling is? And I know we don't talk about feelings in conferences, but that's important. That's important.
Yeah, I would add to say, I think we all have to take a step back and beyond AI and say, what kind of a society do you want to live in, right? Whether it's AI or technology or whatever it is, do you want to live in an equal society? And I love what Professor Kong said earlier, the structural inequality is the problem. And that's something if you're so privileged, I think it's Hillary Clinton who said this, privilege has the privilege of not seeing itself. So if you're that, and then you may live a superficial life, but then the moment you hit a crisis, that's when you know that something is not right. And then you go into a lot of existential angst and try to find out. But I think being aware of what's going on around you, what's going on in the structure, who is getting it, who is not getting it. I think for young people, I think read politics, read humanities. I think that is the number one thing, because everyone is so focused on hey, coding, Python, C, C++, but go read philosophy, go read humanities. I think that's super important at this point where there is a race, of course, everyone is super busy building the system, but there's also a need to step back and see the big picture of it, what are we building and who are we building it for? I think that's what I would say too. I agree with Roberto on that. Yeah.
I have a different question for Warren. In what ways can we build AI systems that are not only gender just, but also inclusive of other underrepresented demographics. So for example, should it be, by ensuring their participation across all phases of development, like data collection, model design, evaluation, and policy making? I know you talked a little bit about this, but can you expand on that?
Well, I was preparing the previous questions, but
You can talk about that
I was trying to answer the new question. So this question is related to my previous talk, and then which was about not only for gender equality, but also like other demographic group equality. So based on my previous work experience, I think considering and caring of other demographics such as like age or like even socioeconomic status of low-income countries also important. And I also can say that during my work experience at Weaver as a research scientist, for example, when during constructing co-BBQ data set, we look into every like social vibe samples, and then I realized that when I read stereotypical sentences about Jeju is an island in South Korea, and then Jeju Shinin. So like stereotypical sentences on such Jeju Shinin sentences, I even didn't know about, do we have such stereotypes on them? I didn't know that because I am not that person. So I believe that encouraging such minority group people into like AI policy maker, making systems or like AI development or AI usages are all important to get diverse voices. So I believe so.
And now can you answer the other question that I asked you? What advice would you give to the students here?
I thought that like in other perspectives of like practical viewpoint, practical perspectives. So after joining the university, I realized that young students really use the new device, ChatGPT, whenever they code, they write their code or they do their homework. And then I do not want to regulate or avoid them to use them. But my thought that is how encourage them to use in creative way and like critical thinking. So I want to point that. So when you use the smart to use tool, so please keep in mind that things. And then if you want to be a technical development or researchers, I want to underscore that how can we make the new tool to provide the users to not just lean on the system, not only lean the tool, but also like how they can make more smarter thinking, or do creative and critical thinking.
So essentially what you're saying is, don't just use the tool to solve whatever problem you're trying to solve. Use the tool to increase your own critical thinking, so you don't lose that, because we're seeing that. There was just, I think MIT or Harvard or somebody just published a paper saying, with the impressions of the brain, after using ChatGPT, and there are so many dead cells in the brain, because we just offload everything to a tool, so you're not thinking anymore. So yeah, thank you. All right, Sue. You're next up. I have a different question for you. Okay. How can we align LLMs with human values? especially gender fairness or gender justice, how can we align the two? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I think that if, as long as the data is biased, it's inevitable that the model is biased. Because like, model is digital replica of the human thought. And I know that current human thought based on the internet data is obviously biases and there are stereotypes on it. So we cannot fix all the data. We cannot actually scan every data going back to the internet and screen out which one is biased or not. I think the how to align the human value like in good way is maybe we can use the post-training mechanism. Like after you train the LLM, we can actually fine-tune the model using the methods like a reinforcement learning, and then we put the human in a loop and then make the model spit out more moral response than the previous one. So that's the one way. And one thing that I think of is like, if I look at the big tech like OpenAI, Google, and maybe Anthropic, the company that makes the famous large language model, they move really fast, and they do not. I mean, they actually really doesn't have any time to think about the moral value because that's not what they care about. They need to make money, and then they have to win the game.
Yeah.
Right? And then usually policy is so slow compared with the technological development. Now it's too extreme. And the technology is developing like this and policymakers cannot chase it. So we have to be really careful about this movement. I honestly think that we have to stop at some point and policymaker or like government should regularize this movement because we are not caring about the moral value of the LLM.
Yes,
So that's something.
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. And
To
I'd like to
previous
talk,
question, to the
I'd like to
previous
talk
question.
more about the governance
To the
part.
previous
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Okay, first of all, how many students are in the room? Okay. Some. Okay, so some are not students. So I thought about it, and I think the only really suggestion that I really would like to give is to feel whenever you have something to do with people or situation, how do you feel about it? You feel good, you feel better, you feel worse. Because exactly when you start having to do with people, then you have this feeling that, is that fair, what's going on? Is the environment where I'm actually doing, studying, working, or whatever fair? And that's the beginning of being aware. And I think awareness means that somehow you have to say, this is totally injustice. This is totally injustice. And being able to have somebody that you can ask for help to speak up. That's the beginning. I think AI just coming afterwards, but it's us. We have the norms, but sometimes the norms are really not for us, they're for the system. So I think it is really the only, and it's not easy, I'm not saying this is an easy suggestion, but and for some people on the other side that maybe have the responsibility, I think be kind with a human being in the next is our major goal. It's not easy either that, but if I'm kind, then I'm kind with other people, then I have a team, then this team might have a moral value. This team might have something, and I might be able to give it to whatever I'm doing. So I think it's all about when you enter in a shop, how do you feel? Oh, I feel good about it because the owner of the shop did something that made me feel good. I enter in the shop, I feel miserable. Why? They want to sell me something very fast, and then there's no. It's all about people. I think we should remember that it's all about people.
Yeah, I would add that cultivate empathy. I think like thinking from another person's shoes, like I think that's like a very undervalued skill in technologists. I think knowing that will help you build better systems over time. So the example that the airport scanner, if you think from a trans person's perspective, like you would have thought about it already, but it means like you have not thought about it from their perspective. So just read more about the society, like what do you want to be doing as, and then like if you think from that person's perspective, like do I want to go through that? What will I feel if I'm that person? I think that goes a long way, and that ChatGPT cannot do. You have to do it yourself.
Great. Great answer. I like the discussion. I'm going to go back to Sue because she mentioned something that was very interesting. What's one practical step, Sue, that the developers, like engineers, can take today to ensure that their AI systems are, a little more balanced, a little more gender just? Is there anything that you can talk about practically that they can do as developers?
Yeah, I think every company or every university should educate young researchers or like any engineers about the AI ethics, like unless like one course, because as an engineer and scientist by myself, I never thought about this equality before I joined this university because company doesn't care about it, and all I have to do is just to do whatever my manager asking me to do.
Kalai used to be her manager.
Thank you, Sue.
And on money, right? so I mean, there was no opportunity to think about this issue. I didn't know that this is like that critical issue. And I think they are not bad people. They just don't have a chance to get education about that ethical value and philosophy. And I think that's very critical.
I completely agree.
Can we comment on that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I like that because this is really getting to the point of checklist. Okay, so for example, in Europe, in the old days, you were supposed to go to take a class. You're not talking about university. The class is called religious. Okay, all right. So nobody cared. Then you go to university, and there is, for example, a class on ethics of business. It's mandatory, so people have to do it. Nobody cared. So the thing is, and this is the plaidoyer, is actually a German word for trying to make it like to my colleagues, whoever has an interest should embed it in what they do. A standalone course that people don't care is not win anything. What is important is that if somebody says, oh, what I'm doing might have an implication, let me get some people and learn and maybe include it in my work, whatever the work be, teaching, creating, writing, working. And it has to be embedded because otherwise you have the checklist. The checklist, yes, no, yes, that's it. Certified.
I agree. This is the same thing that happens at least in the US with diversity, because all the companies just want a checklist. Oh, did they take the diversity class? Sure. Did they learn anything? No. Will they change anything? Absolutely not. Yes, I've taken the class. So this is the checklist approach is everywhere. And like Sue mentioned, companies or businesses, they want to make money. If they can't make money, they will not do anything that will deviate from that.
I want to comment as our previous manager.
Yes.
So I think in my experience, like when we were working at Xerox Park, so most of the work is in the lab, right? I mean, we would code and then we would ship it, like publish it, whatnot. The moment all the how our work is like directly affecting people came when we started visiting those people. For example, we went and visited Ethiopian farmers. We stayed with them for 7 days, and then we are looking at their lifestyle. We are looking at how critical our one data point could make an entire change in the planting season of their life, which means like, that they feed their kids. It cascades into such serious problems. So now we know the gravity of the number we give. Otherwise, we are just giving a number. It's like it's 3.1, 4.2, who cares? But now I know what that 3.1 means to that particular farmer. So that's where the gravity comes. So that's why like go to the ground, like look at what your solution is doing to the people. I think that's like the number one thing I would say. Like whatever system you're building, just go and look at it, educate yourself as to what are the implications of it. That's one thing I definitely learned as a startup founder, like how our products are actually affecting people.
That's a great observation. Yeah. I have a question for Warhan about balancing between cultural localization and universal values. and incorporating gender justice and AI into that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So, elaborate your question.
Okay.
I mean, no. I will try to elaborate.
Okay.
Your
Absolutely.
question.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So the question is okay. My intention of the question is that, for example, I believe that like gender bias or the recognition about the gender could be different culture and culture, or society by society, or country by country. For example, like females in Muslim countries quite be different from the others. So my question, no, your question is about like how when we construct model or data set, how we consider such development, such differences about universal bias or universal gender justice to culture sensitive specific bias. And then this is my current question, so I would like to ask to the audience or to the other panelists. But yeah, I mean, I do not have a specific answer. So basically, if I could divide such gender bias or other social bias things into categorize into like universal things and then culture things, and then firstly we need to pursue like universal wide bias equality, but I mean the equality first, and then specify or like fine tune the model into like culture specific things. But I think it is very hard to separate what is the universal value and then what is the culture specific value. But I would like to receive or like get response.
Anyone else?
No, I think it's like a very valid concern. Like I think that the example of like what does the Pope look like versus what does the CEO look like. I mean, if you look at historical data, CEOs have looked like white men. I mean, now we are like pushing for equality and we are coming for it. So where do you draw the line, and are you sure about that? This is all the moral ambiguity that you're facing with. And again, it comes back to Roberto's comment, like what kind of society do you want to build? I think you are pulling your values in there first, and at some point your values will dictate what you think is the historical accuracy versus what is the values that you want to achieve in the data bias. So yeah, ultimately that's why I think people should think up from their other person's perspective what feels right to them. I think empathy is very valued in that case.
Anyone else wants to answer?
I was thinking something completely different because the question posed by this panel is, we are expecting from AI some miracle. The AI will do something. What is exactly the name of the panel?
It's gender just.
Gender just,
Yes.
yeah. So I was thinking, a few years ago, somebody invented a car. There was no car, and then the car was, put into production. People started using it, and then there was a panel where somebody probably said, "Is our society more just because we have a car?"
Yeah.
So that's why I'm a bit puzzled, because of course it changed behavior for sure. I know that before, when you were dating, you would basically go and knock at the door, and the parent would say, "Who are you?" Then when the car arrived, then people say, "Oh, I can actually meet somebody without bypassing the parents." So the behavior changed, but whether this has to do with justice, I have no idea. So I'm actually asking the question whether the panel question is really relevant, because is that really relevant?
Let me reread the topic.
Okay.
Toward a gender just digital future, rethinking how we build and govern AI. So in that context, all the different technological or LLMs or the different tools that have been built, like BBQ, all of these things that we've already built in academia or outside of academia, are those gender just? Obviously right now they're not.
how do we work towards a future where we could have some influence on these tools that are being built that would enable them to be more gender just than they currently are is one of the things. And from the governance perspective, what are your thoughts on how do we bring about some sort of high-level governance, whether it's political influence, whether it's influence in academia or some other academic publications? How do we have some influence on that angle to bring about some governance of all of these tools towards more gender-just results, essentially? That's how I'm interpreting it, and I'm hoping that this makes it a little clearer. But because right now, obviously, the tools are not gender-just. We just heard for the entire day that they're not. So for the panel to think about, what are your thoughts on ways to either incorporate these tools or ways to massage the data or ways to any other ways to have an influence on all these tools that have been built already and are being built, and a bunch of students here are probably already contributing to things like that. How can they think such that they can, enable themselves and have an influence on whatever they're building to make it a little more gender just? And to that extent, what does gender just really mean? So that's one of my questions to the panels is, what do you think gender just means? Is it only for women? Is it for men? Is it for both? Is it for none? What do you mean by that, right? So can I have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about it this morning, but Professor Lee mentioned about a lot of examples on pharmaceutical trials or, like the car dummies and everything. This has always been a problem because the structural inequalities exist, right? I think the biggest difference is we are now in a hockey stick moment and we are at an inflection point where the AI is just taking off. It is just exponentially exploding.
And it's a hype.
Yeah.
There is a lot of
There's
hype.
a lot of hype,
Yeah.
and there's also, it's moving fast, and that's why I think there's like an urgency to actually address it as soon as we can. I think that is the one difference I see. Because any technology, whether it's a car, whether it's a pill, whether it's a dummy, it doesn't matter, this bias has always creeped into the technology. I think the reason why we're thinking about this is it's moving so fast, how can we apply the brakes, or what can we do to not let it crash? I think that's what we are looking at right now.
So you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I will solve the problem right away. I think that's what we are all discussing. We are coming up with how can we do many of these? And this conference is a great start. We are talking about a lot of things, and Roberto has more things to say.
Well, I can only say something about academia because that's basically what I spend most of my working life. But we need to create incentive mechanisms so that colleagues and students alike will see this not like, oh, I need to do a checklist or it's a mandatory course, but they see a benefit, a real benefit. So what is the benefit of something morally good besides being? And so that's actually, for example, university, and I have not very much weeks still. I'm here till the end of September. I'm hoping that we can install something like a seed. And maybe then Seoul National University, which is one of the best universities here, will become the top of that. If they do, the other follow. I think it's a following process. So somebody has to say, oh, why should I do it? Because I think it's morally good, or because I think it's... And then if you are in the position to influence others, then maybe it goes. It's baby steps. And if we have somebody from the UN here, so they have a completely different attitude. They see the thing from the big global thing. I'm sure that you see all the difficulty. When I'm an individual and I see the world and I say, oh my God, I can't do anything. That's not true. I can always be gentle and be contributing to me and to my next person. And that could be a student, could be my wife, could be my daughter. I have 3 daughters, by the way, so the theme is quite important for me because they're all grown up. And so I think we need to bring our message here that is on paper, on slides, in our life, in our working life, in our real life, and contribute and network. If somebody has the same idea, I think, contribute by networking and maybe creating something that together we are better than alone, or something like that. So small, small steps make a revolution.
I kind of agree, because the open source community kind of works in that manner. Question, yes, sorry.
We're just contributing to the conversation. I'll
Yes,
probably
absolutely.
need
You
the
can use that.
translation.
Yeah.
There are solutions. They're hard, but there are solutions. And if you want to talk about solution that is actually feasible, but they're also very hard, talk about data justice, which means fixing the whole internet. Who is up to it? Who can fix it? Volunteers? Yeah, we tried for 20 years to fix Wikipedia. We still have a gender gap because we cannot keep up with the amount of information out there, amount of misinformation out there, fixing the whole society to agree in an equal term for what is, sexism, what is, gender stereotyping. We need to fix every man to agree on that women and men are equal, which is still debatable. So there is a lot of conversation that we need to have to fix this. But there's also a lot of fixing and cleaning up to the data that is right now is there. The dangerous part that before, we didn't think that we will have the technology that will read everything. We were comfortable to have bits and pieces scattered all over the internet that does not really harm that much. It's harmful for those who would seek it. But right now we are building a system that reads everything. It's learning from all of our mistakes, what we ignored for so long. That vision of that male-dominated version of the women we know on the internet, from our books, from our religions, from our history, and now the internet or AI is taking this only version of what we know about women and girls and explosively spreading it everywhere. Generating images, generating videos, generating text way faster than we all human can do. And in a matter of years, we're going to have more AI-generated content than what we produce as humans. So we're now in that stretch. It is urgent that we need to fix the data. But who's going to do it? Government, the people, academia, politician, private sector?
Everybody.
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 Do we have the time, our lifetime, to just fix the previous 7,000 years of civilization? I don't know. That's a question. And I hope that someone will be more hopeful to find a solution. Second part, design justice. Can we fix the STEM sector? Can we have more women designing AI? Can we have more perspective, more diversity in that sector? It's also a matter of who is investing on education, who is investing in breaking the glass ceiling, who is investing, in our private sector are actually caring that much to look into, justice within the teams, diversity, finding better algorithm to fix it. And then going back to the humans, the users, the society who's using AI. What are we going to do with it? Is there going to be more people using AI for good, or is going to be more people who are going to use it for bad? Who's going to produce more content, misinformation or good information? And is that going to go back to feed AI and create that cycle? I mean, I'm sorry, not trying to be like, oh, it is rosy or it's so bad, but those are questions that we need to ask right now. But the right question might lead to better solutions.
Well, we do have AI tools that are getting very, very powerful. Perhaps we could use some of these very, very powerful tools to scope the data. It's like a scalpel, and just focus on gender-specific data and clean it with obviously some requirements. And then train on just that data as an alternative to what is out there now. right now we have like training on anything, it's just like a dump, right? But if we have a very skewed and cleaned up version of the data, and we train only on that, what happens? Can we do a comparison? I'm just spouting something kind of.
Could I make a comment on that? Because it reminds me of somebody who has a messy house. It's a mess. My house is a mess, you know. And then somebody said, "Oh well, I'll get somebody," and doesn't work, Michael. Oh, okay. So I was thinking of the example is somebody has a messy house. The house is a mess. So, oh my God, my house is a mess, so I need help. So somebody comes, it could be whoever, you know, there's these people that clean the house and reorder the house. 1 week later, the house is a mess again. Why? Because a person is not able to maintain an order. So the thing is, I appreciated the fixing, but the problem is us producing. Now, the interesting question is when it goes out of our hands, and then the AI is producing the thing, then this is the moment where, oh, we are no more in control. But the problem is really, fixing is something important, but you know, there's prevention. So how can we educate people, young generation and ourselves, to be aware and see what justice is? And of course, you know, one can start having a conference on what justice means, you know, fine. I'm actually pretty fine with conferences on justice or fairness or whatever, but at the end of the day, I think the danger is what you're saying is now AI is start to becoming on its own. You know, they start generating stuff, and then of course there's a lot of politics. There's a political movement. Think about what is happening in the world at the moment of the word diversity. Now, I don't want to make any statement here, but obviously the world is not fair.
Any other?
And she has a question.
Oh, yes, please.
Oh, the mic is there. Go.
Okay,
Oh, he's giving us. Okay, you keep mine.
This may be a bit left field, but this is me as a psychologist saying this. And one of the things that I've heard being said over and over again about ethics and the codification of ethics, we have a long history of this. We have appropriate checklists that are not just checklists for ethical behaviour, ethics in research, ethics in design, human subjects, ethics. We have well-established ways of promoting accountability. So these aren't just tick boxes. And I think about myself as a researcher, you know, it's not just about shall we do something moral. This isn't about morality. This is about accountability. So, and what does it look like to be non-accountable? We saw in the presentation earlier, what does it look like for a company to not be accountable? But we should be, you know, we're talking here about accountability of researchers and human beings, and we should not miss that because first off there is a long history, and I'd say psychologists have this awful long history on the basis of some terrible things that happened, which we won't go into right now. But you know, like how do we learn from that and bring that in? And I think the interdisciplinary nature, the things that you're talking about, are critical and important, but I've heard a lot here about governance and a lot about data and a lot about the systems and the technology itself, and we're kind of talking about people as some kind of out there, and right now trying to bring it back in. So what does human-centric mean here? And it means not just making a moral decision, it means that moral decision has accountabilities associated with it. So students in here, I would say, my advice to them as well is, you know, don't just learn. You said don't just learn about what your discipline is. Learn about human ethics, because human ethics are also the basis for the diversity, equity, and inclusion space and where that came from and why equity is important. I don't want to get on a soapbox here because I could say something. I also work for the UN. I could say something that's a little non-PC in this space, but I just feel like we might be missing something that's already there. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't fix the data, but actually I agree we need to think about the people. I really love the idea of mindfulness in this space as a psychologist, and that it's been applied to here because the mindful use of data, the mindful use of our own research approaches and the mindful use of design and all the other places that we can talk about this. So yeah, thanks. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Jamie. That was excellent. Thank you for your.
Can I have a follow-up comment on that? I think we are touching upon what are the consequences if we don't adhere to those ethics, right? I mean, I think we saw a little bit on that, like companies are getting sued if that doesn't happen, and but it's not like like clinical trials, like where there are like very specific regulations, and if we are going in the opposite direction in the US where it's getting deregulated, so it's a governance question, like who's gonna tie the bell to the cat, like that's the question right now.
We have a question from the audience, I think. What? Someone there? Can you ask your question?
I am lifelong education director. Since the choice of human emotion and the choice of words and action determine one's life, I think it is necessary to educate oneself, understand others, and pay attention to the other person's point of view.
I think I understood that, but I wasn't sure. Can somebody reread that? Want to reread that?
We have the receiver, so if you want to speak in Korean, it's fine.
한국말로
Yes,
말씀드리겠습니다.
can we have the receivers?
네, 인간의 감정의 선택과 언어의 선택은 삶에 있어서 평생을 좌우하는 것을 많이 보았습니다. 그래서 자기 이해와 타인 이해, 상대방 관점에 마음 기울여보기 교육이 아동기, 유아 시절부터 필요하다고 생각합니다. 저는 평생교육원을 운영하고 있는 사람이고 이전에 10여 년 전에는 가족상담, 청소년 상담을 했었던 사람인데 사회 상황과 현상을 봤을 때 자기 이해와 타인 이해 관점이 굉장히 필요하고 또한 상대방 포커스를 맞춰주고 그 배려 있는 그런 태도 교육이 이루어진다면 이런 관점, 젠더 관점에서 평등한 상황이 이루어질 것이라고 생각합니다.
Did everyone get that, or should I just summarize?
Summarize. I got the latter half.
Can you please summarize? That would be
Okay, so she's running lifelong education center in the Republic of Korea, and she thinks that the human center, I mean the choices that we make actually it impacts the lifelong the journey of some like one person, right? So understanding oneself and thinking about other people's perspectives is very important. So education kicks in there. So focusing on what other people perceive will help understand the gender perspectives and maybe bring the equality. So that's what she was saying.
감사합니다. All right. How are we
maybe there's
doing
a
on
comment
time?
on the question. So
There was?
that was a question, right?
That was a comment.
That was a
It was a comment, not a
Yes.
question.
How are we doing on time? How much?
We can wrap it up actually.
Oh,
Or we have, if we have any other questions, we can ask and then we can wrap it up.
I can do one more question.
Yes,
I can
sure.
ask the audience, okay. So, let me see. Kalai, I can ask you a question. Your turn. How do we ensure that AI systems designed for safety, such as early warning weather alerts, are actually reaching and protecting the most vulnerable people on the planet?
Yeah, so whether it's for climate or whether it's for healthcare, it doesn't matter, like all the AI systems, it has to reach the tail end of the population. So if you look at the distribution, most of the systems that we design are for the middle band of the population, right? So if that works, if 80% of the systems work, people say, oh, pretty good, it works. But what happens is most of the marginalized, and that's where the gender-based violence happens, like, all of those things are in the tail end. And people are generally blind to those things if they don't actively pay attention to it. So one paper I read very recently, which I didn't even think about it until I read it, is like, whenever these extreme weather events happen, the gender-based violence from intimate partners, it increases. No one would have thought a connection, but the thing is, like, when there's instability due to weather events, whether it's earthquake or whatever it is, right? It triggers a lot of things. It triggers economic instability, which in turn, the intimate partner violence increases. So there was various papers on that recently. So who would have thought about it, right, in that angle? So in that case, like, you have more responsibility. Now the alerts have to go out on time and make sure this doesn't happen because of that. Again, the AI is one part of it, but I want to step back and say the entire technology has to be inclusive, and AI more so because it's so fast and it has wide range of implications. So I would just say that, like, don't just focus on the 80 to 90%, but the 10% matter.
Thank you. Anyone else want to?
Well,
Take a stab.
the question would be, why should they?
Why should they?
Exactly. Of course, we know they should, but what is the incentive? So there's no incentive and there's no regulation. So here we're back to the conversation on, I mean, in Europe, there was somebody from the European Commission here. So in Europe, they decided to go on AI regulation. Then I think Korea was following. Now the rest of the humanity is going into deregulation.
Yeah.
And now I think Japan has also changed. I don't know what is happening here. So at the end of the day, the point is, I was talking to a lawyer who's in conformity of a very large company, and he said, I will do everything that is by law, nothing more. That's it. And there's no incentive. He and the company wants to make money in a proper way without nothing wrong, but they want to follow strictly what the law tells and nothing more. So there is no incentive. So the problem is that, this is an incredible group of people that share a motivation. So how can we take this motivation out there? Actually, it's a challenge. Maybe we could have the panel is how we do that. Because this is really how can each of us can, in our little thing, try to change that. Because there's no, the system has no incentive. I mean,
That is actually a very good point, because human beings work with incentives. If you incentivize a certain thing, then that's what's going to get done. All right, any final comments from each of the panelists? Just anything you want to share on AI, gender justice, or anything else?
Can I add? So, I want to add the comments of the previous conversation. But I know that Europe countries do AI regulations more compared to the United States and also South Korea. I know that South Korea is in between like EU and the United States, and then I think the conversation inside South Korea is getting to lean on not regulate AI, and then I think it is because if we or the government regulate more on AI development, then it impedes the development, and then it because the speed of AI development is very quick, so it in the sense of like business and economy, it will hurt, I think. So the solution could be self-regulation of each company, and then and in terms of incentives, if the company's solution has like solution or products harms the society, they can get like like disincentives from the society, like they can like penalty from the society. So one could be solution could be like public red teaming challenges. So for example, they can open their models publicly, and then public users can attack the models to find out some bad activities or bad behaviors first in advance, and then they can report the users for the community and the society. So by the users and the society can compare which models or which products have the bad behavior compared to the others. They can choose more safe ones, and then it finally returns their revenue, and then it could like circulate the economy in positive way, I think.
That's a great point. Possible solution.
Yeah.
Like concluding thoughts?
Yes.
Okay. My one thing, if I were to take it, I would say like know the people who are building the system for. It's not only good for morality, it's good for your business.
Robert, any final thoughts?
I think it's self-regulation. Self-regulation will not work. So the problem is that, and I'm taking another example because there's a big debate on innovation versus regulation. I also believe that Europe is actually on regulation because they are not so extremely innovative in technology, so that they are kind of defended. But I think self-regulation is a bit like when somebody has a behavior that we cannot change. Then in order to change a behavior that is damaging, it needs to find help. And the help can be several ways, but ultimately you cannot do it by yourself. That's actually my point, that there are so many conflicts of interest that, it will not work. Even if it's a good intention, it will not work. So that's actually a dilemma. It's a dilemma between development and regulating, which always been like that. When we have a car, at the beginning there was no safety belt, and people died, and then people say, it's a lot of people dying, let's put safety belt, and then the number of death decrease. But people die. And I'm sure in the AI world, people will die as well, and then we'll learn something. So it's a cycle. What I'm scared if the AI takes over, because then it's no more the human that is in control, then it's another story. So then it's another society.
So
I agree. I agree in some sense. Yeah.
Good. I'm going to agree.
your final thoughts.
Okay. So we discussed a lot today, and I think many of the speakers and audience think that more like pessimistic point of view of the AI, like a dystopiatic future. But actually, AI, like AGI, is a great chance to achieve the equality in society, because in next generation, next to your generation, my student's generation, AGI will gonna be a word. They will learn mostly from AGI. They rely a lot from AGI rather than, maybe people. So even if there was some biases in the society, this is really a good chance to remove that if we tune it right. I know that in history, there was some biases of the male dominant culture, and this is a great chance to fix it. So don't think it as some weapon. It's actually a good tool if we use it right.
Thank you to all the panelists. Any other questions for the panelists?
From student, from Iha? Yeah.
Anywhere? Oh, yeah, one.
한글로 질문 드려도 될까요?
Oh, I grabbed it though.
I need to go on the channel, by the way.
It's two. Channel 1 for Korean, channel 2 for English.
Yes. Okay.
Oh,
안녕하세요. 저는 이화여자대학교 인공지능학과 재학 중인 정윤서라고 합니다. 오늘 강연 너무 잘 들었습니다. 질문이 한 가지가 있는데 오늘 주제 전반적인 부분에서 드릴 질문입니다. 젠더 이슈 같은 윤리적인 문제들이 있다는 거는 AI에 있다는 거는 잘 알려져 있는데 이 이슈에 대해서 논의를 할 때 공학 분야의 사람들끼리만 논의를 하거나 아니면 사회과학 분야 아니면 인문학 분야의 사람들끼리만 논의를 하는 경향이 있는 것 같습니다. 근데 이런 식으로 논의를 하게 되면은 정말 효과적인 해결책이나 아니면 실효성이 있는 방법이 나오지 않을 것 같다고 생각을 하는데 그래서 이 부분에 대해서 어떻게 생각하시는지 궁금하고 그리고 이제 이 부분을 해결할 수 있는 방법이 어떤 것이 있을지 의견이 있으시면 듣고 싶습니다.
This is one of the best questions we've had.
Yeah,
Thank you.
this is why I think interdisciplinarity wins, even though it's hard to bring in a lot of people together. I think someone had a slide. I think it might have been Dr. who presented before. Who are the different scientists that we need to bring in? It includes psychologists. It includes philosophy. It includes technologists. And definitely, we need to learn from each other, and that's how we learn empathy and we learn about the society. At the end of the day, we are connected by our human experience. I think knowing other people's experience, I think that enriches your life, and that's how we should see it. Be curious and be curious to learn about all the other people's experience. And the more you learn, the more you're going to think from other people's shoes, and then the better you are going to be a decision maker.
Let me make a comment. So there is something called a silos syndrome. So people tend to stay by themselves for a reason because there's no incentive to, ultimately the solution will be if everybody will sit on the same table and in good faith will work together with different disciplines and then spend time and do something. That would be great, and that's what we're trying to do. But the reality is that unless something changes in whatever system you are, it could be the university, it could be the company, there's this silos mentality where this is mine, and this is an enemy, and there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of stuff, so there is not any incentive that makes me working with you if you're my neighbor. Maybe I can work with somebody very far away because then I don't have to share the room, the money, the thing. Is a syndrome of the neighbor. Sometimes, you're very friendly with somebody that lives a kilometer far away, but your neighbor, well, I'm sharing something, I want that, and that's actually something that should be broken by whoever has the possibility. So if you have, for example, somebody in university that is for interdisciplinary and they're able to create that environment, that's the right environment for you to be working. If it's the other way around, everybody is in their own office and nobody talks to the neighbor, maybe that's not the right place to be. Maybe.
Yeah. Oh, no. Anybody else?
If we have
One
time.
second. Anybody else wants to answer for a question? Susan?
I want to answer.
Okay.
Yes, the mic. You have the mic.
No, but it's really a great question.
That's excellent.
I used to be a developer, and I totally understand where you come from. We don't have to, as developers, software developers, we never have to discuss human rights. We don't have the time, right? You're always racing to get the best technology. Before you wake up in the morning, there is a new platform, another new language, you need to keep up with it. There is no personal incentive for software developers to understand human rights, to understand women's rights, to think about other genders, unless you are self-motivated, unless you have that softness and good heart that, it is in everyone. But after all, we're humans, we have limited time, we have limited space. And I think she's asking the right question. What would motivate a software developer or an AI software engineer who is going to be one of the highest paid or trying to be one of those people that's going to kill themselves and study to get to the best career in a competitive sector? Why would they care about gender?
Yeah.
That's a very radical question, and I think she has all the right to ask because they come here because probably the professor has also asked them to be here because there is an incentive to have from the professor.
But that's the answer.
I
That's
hope.
the answer.
Yeah.
The answer to the
No,
professor. The answer to the professor. You see.
And the university.
Yes.
Well, the university is professor, right? So
Yeah.
it's
No,
made up of people.
I think if universities mandate that AI, responsible AI and ethical AIs become part of the curriculum, that will force it into everyone. If
That one,
government
yeah.
gives incentive to universities who have it as part of the curriculum, that will be a great one. But since we are moving to deregulation and this restriction,
Yes.
there will be a little bit less. So we're also trying to, maybe you will have a better way of, the student themselves co-organize themselves and push for more than just an AI that will be serving profit. Because I don't think systems will be incentivizing responsible AI anymore. That's the sad reality that's happening, but it has to be said. Government is unleashing economic speed for AI, which means less regulation, less responsibilities, forcing AI to be more innovative, but with no brakes. So I think this is going to be more personal. It's going to be an individual movement that comes from the student.
Yeah, I would like to echo that. I mean, that's a very valid thing, which, we grapple with those things as well. I think part of this thing is like we have this, it's very philosophical if you think about it. We are told to hustle 24/7. And at some point, there's no other way to survive without hustling 24/7. Do you have time to sit and read a book or read something else? I think there's like a spiritual starvation that's happening all over the world, and as a society, we need to reckon what kind of a human being do you want our next generation to become, and I think that is the consequence of all the technology that we're going to build. So if you don't have the time to sit and think, if you don't have time to sit and daydream about things, then there's going to be a starvation of all kinds of imagination.
I have a practical solution.
Yes.
Okay. I like the discussion because I think what we should take is the opportunity to the people that came here, and we're very thankful that the organizer, the UN women organizing. Let's engage all these people and see whether something comes up. Maybe it's a student initiative that comes up that creates something. Maybe they talk to the professor, they sit next to them, maybe they say, maybe I come. And maybe you create something. I think in this country, as far as I understand, I don't have a lot of understanding, but you have also an opportunity to change things because you have a kind of history on that. So you could probably change from the bottom up. Because the top down is not easy, but bottom up is also a potential thing. So top down and bottom up, and maybe rather than going home now and just disappear, let's see whether this could generate something. Maybe next year, tomorrow, you could probably make a summary of action that the participants can do. Something like that.
So what I see is between the US and Europe, for people that don't know, I was in the US for almost 40 years, and I just moved to Portugal, so I'm now in the EU. And there is a huge difference in mindset, in the AI regulations actually work. So I'm a lot happier because nobody is just stealing all my data all the time, which is what the US does. So I can tell you from my perspective, it's quite different. But going back to her question is, like Robert said, incentives. What is, the US is incentivized by greed.
Yeah.
Wall Street is greed, and right now it's rampant greed. There's no limit to it, okay? So whatever regulations there were, they're all being torn down. So people are fleeing from the US to the EU because there's at least some sort of framework there that is sort of working. And it's a refuge right now. So that's what I'm seeing from my perspective of what's happening. But there's no great solution to this. But definitely, the first thing is you have to feel safe. If you don't feel safe, you can't do anything because you're just in survival mode. So find your safety spot, and then you can start branching out and finding other people who you can collaborate with, just like Robert was saying. and then go from there.
Also, Rupa, I would like to point out it's a privilege to go to UU also, right? I mean,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
coming
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Silicon Valley,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
to afford to live there,
Yeah.
someone has to be a cog in the machine. And there's
Yeah,
no other
absolutely.
way to like,
Yeah.
go and think of, hey, I will
Yeah.
build this. Like, her thing, like after Imad pointed out, like, we are all different cogs in the machine. We are trying to fix a system which is operating us. So yeah, that's a challenge.
All right, I think we have exhausted this topic.
We could talk about this forever.
Thank you for the great questions from the audience and from Mug and me. And thank you to the panelists for being here and being open. And at the end of the day, everybody's tired, but let's go.